Is memorizing the same as learning? You know, I have been teaching memory seminars for a long time now, since 1991. And one of the objections that I get to it is, you know what, I don't want to memorize, I want to learn. Or a teacher might say to me, Ron, I don't want my students memorizing, I want them to learn, I want them to understand, I want them to comprehend. And my response to is memorizing really learning, or is learning and memorizing equal to each other, is I would say that it is not the end of the learning process. In other words, memory training or memorizing something is not the end of the learning process. The ultimate goal of the learning process is understanding. It is comprehension. It's knowing how something really works. So let's pretend like right here, this is where you don't know anything about a topic. And right here, you are an expert at it. You could teach a college level class on it. You are knowing nothing about it, and here you're an expert. Will memorizing information get you from here to here? Absolutely not. No, it won't. So people say, that's it. That's proof. Memory is not the goal to learning. Memorizing is not beneficial to learning. And to that, I say hogwash. Of course it is. Of course having a good memory and being able to memorize really rapidly is beneficial to learning. Well, Ron, if this is where you don't know anything about a topic and this is where you're an expert and you know it well and you could teach a college class and you really understand it, if memory training won't get you from there to there, then how is memorizing the same as learning? Memorizing is not the end of the learning process, but it is something that can accelerate the learning process. Memory training won't get you from here to here, but if you have the ability to memorize something really quick, it might get you from here to here much more rapidly than rote memorization. In other words, I memorized the United States Constitution last year. It's 4,543 words. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. The first time that I memorized it, I just memorized it. And if you would have asked me, what does it mean? I would have been like, I'm really not totally sure, but I can repeat it. And then you say, well, that's not the goal. That's not what I want. I don't want to be a walking zombie just repeating information. I want to understand it. Well, let me share this with you. I got a greater understanding of the United States Constitution because I memorized it a lot quicker than if I had not memorized it. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to memorize, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to know if you're understanding or learning it or not, if you really understand it. So I'll give you some tips on that. Before I do, here's how memorizing helped me to learn it. I memorized the data. I got it all in my head, and I did it very rapidly. I memorized 4,500 words in maybe 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, working in my spare time. But this is how it aided in the learning. I go for things called walk and talks, where I just go for a walk, and I talk about the things that I've memorized, and I reason them out. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about the Constitution now. And I'd go for a walk. All legislative powers here invested shall be granted who shall be vested in a Congress of the United States. And I would say that line, and then I'd be like, what does that really mean? Do you see what I'm getting at here? If I had it written down in a journal, and I had it in a notebook, I'd have to carry that journal with me when I went on these walk and talks. And sometimes I do, but I'm not reading it. I'm talking about what's in my brain. Memorizing something and putting it in your brain and have the knowledge there gives you the ability to go for a walk and reason it out. But it also enables you to do other things. It enables you to see patterns. When I memorized the Constitution, I was able to see, oh, wait a minute, this is kind of like that part over there. Oh, I see similarities in that. And seeing similarities aids in the learning process. So I'm going to say it loud and clear. Memorizing is not the same as learning, but it is a tool that if you are trying to learn science, if you're trying to learn history, if you're trying to learn philosophy, if you're trying to learn medicine, and you can use some memory techniques to speed up and get all this data in your head. Now you have all the data points, and you might be able to go in and take the test and do well in the test simply because you memorized it. But the goal is not getting a good grade on the test, maybe it is, but it's not the only goal. The main goal should be to know the information, to understand it. So you get it in there. You start reasoning with it. You start processing it. How do you know if you've really learned it or if you've just memorized it? Here is when you know you really, really learned something. When you can reason with it. When you can contrast and say, I see this is kind of how this fits with that, or this is kind of how this part of it is different from that. When you can reason with it and see the differences, but also see how they complement each other, that's when you know you're really starting to learn it and understand it. When you can apply it to your life or a different scenario, that's when you know you've really learned it and you understand it. I do jujitsu. And I could memorize jujitsu moves, but when I'm actually in the middle of wrestling with somebody, or in jujitsu, it's called rolling, and it's a position that's kind of close to the one I memorized, but not exactly. If I can adapt it to that situation and still pull off the move, then I know I really understand it. Because if I just memorized it, then I would be required to be in that exact same situation that I memorized. But if I understand it, then I don't have to be in that exact same situation. I just have to apply the principles that I understood from that move. Seeing the similarities and the differences, applying it to your life, seeing how one thing flows into the next. These are how you know if you've really understood it or if you've just memorized it. If an aspect of what you have memorized has been taken away, and you can still understand the concept, but realize what is missing. And a great example of that would be in math. If a variable is gone, or if a number is changed, and you still understand, oh wait, I still understand this math formula. Or in jiu-jitsu, I still understand this even though that aspect isn't there. Then you know you have reached the highest level of learning, which is understanding, which is comprehension. Now I'm going to say this about memory. When you have understood something, then you remember it better. Wow! So memory training is going to help you understand better. And then when you understand better, you will remember it more. It's a full circle. They complement each other. They are not at war with each other. They are complementing each other. Memory is part of the learning process. Memory gives you something to reason against. Now, can you just memorize a bunch of facts? Certainly you can. I use techniques known as the mind palace or the memory palace, where I will pick landmarks around my house. I could do it out here on this land. That tree could be number one. That path behind me could be number two. And let's say I want to memorize the periodic table of elements. The first element is hydrogen, so I would see somebody waving high over there in that tree. I would see the next element is helium, so I would see helium balloons on the path right here. And if I picked out 100 spots on this land and turned each element into a picture, I could memorize them using that mind palace technique. And that's the mind palace technique. I'll put some video links down in the description of this that dive deep into the mind palace. It's one of my favorite memory techniques. It's where you visualize a room and then take what you want to memorize and place it around the room or on spots of land. And then to recall it, you just go through the data. Memory is not the end of the learning process. It is a tool in the learning process that can accelerate the learning process. The goal is understanding. The goal is comprehension. But I believe memory training and the ability to memorize really quick with stuff like the mind palace is going to speed that up. Then go for your walk and talks and talk about it. Or maybe you have study groups and you talk about it. You reason it out. You understand it more. But I will never be convinced that memory training is not a tool that can accelerate that. If you want to learn more memory training tips about like the Mind Palace, click in the link in the description below. I'll put some links in there. If you are a fan of memory training or memory, or you just like this video, you thought it was worthwhile, give me a thumbs up, please. That tells YouTube that this was good video. So I also appreciate all comments. Let me know what you think about memory training. What are you trying to memorize right now? But get my Black Belt memory course. It is a course on how to improve your memory. It's, in my humble opinion, one of the best memory training courses out there. So I love sharing with you. I hope to see you on the next video, and the only way that I can really see you on the next video is if you subscribe. See you there.